bring yourself to the level where your artistry and your ability is unquestionable.
Sheldon Epps, television director, theater director, television Girlfriends, Frasier, Friends, Sister, Joey, George Lopez Show, Read Between the Lines, a theater list way too long to even read. He received the James Irvine Leadership Award for his work as the artistic director at the Pasadena Playhouse. He was nominated for a Laurence Olivier MasterCard Award, the Helen Hayes Award for Outstanding Director.
This makes me tired. You know that. I get tired when people go through all these things.
I'm overwhelmed.
Thank
you. So I think we should just dive right in.
Yes, let's.
Conversation. And one of the things I sent you yesterday was the video from Sterling K. Brown, where he really, talked about what it's like to be a Black man in our industry and how largely his circles are filled with white people, and how he felt like he has to wear a mask all the time. And he talked about, people telling him, oh, don't get so mad when a white person in the same position as him is thought of as passionate or forceful.
Right.
And so it affected me very deeply. And so I just wanted to know what your thoughts were on all of that.
Well, first of all, thank you for sending it. I had not seen that before, and I'm a great admirer of Sterling as an actor.
Yes.
But one of the reasons I admire him so much as an actor is because I have a sense that there is a great human being, a great soul there, and he brings that to his work. Mm-hmm. And I certainly understand what he's talking about when he talks about Black men of color, having to wear a mask. I have felt that. I'll admit that I certainly have done that at times. I think you reach a level of either security or madness or frustration or whatever that brings you to the point where you say, I am not going to do that anymore. And where in fact you realize that it can be useful to take the mask off, because that is a mask of passivity and even a mask of contriteness. Mm. And sometimes I think what you have to do in a leadership position as a man of color or a woman of color in the arts is to say, you can make me angry. That is possible. You can go too far with your feeling that racially we're in this together, and that you can make jokes about race, and that you can feel comfortable about race to the point where you think you're in my club. You're not in my club. And I need sometimes to get rid of that mask and let you know that, and let you know that I will be treated with a level of respect, a level of dignity, a level of intelligence even, that you're not used to putting out there for a person of color. I said to my wife the other day, I have problems moving through the world sometimes because it's often the case that I am the first and only Black person that many white people have had a real conversation with, because they've been forced into a situation where they have to have a real conversation with me. Not a passive conversation, but a real conversation, and a conversation, frankly, where I have been a person of some power and some authority, running a theater, directing a show, whatever, so that you must deal with me, and I want you to deal with me in my completeness, in the total of my being, the total of what I am. And sometimes what I am is angry, just as any person of any color is. I get angry, and I don't want to be afraid of showing that to you, and I won't be afraid if it's been incited.
Did you have to work your way to this kind of power, the way you feel like you can express yourself? Was there a time when you didn't feel like you could express yourself in that way, and then something happened, something shifted?
Yes, absolutely. I think that, historically, and of course this goes all the way back to as Black people, our slave origins in this country. Historically, people of color have been taught to misbehave, to not misbehave, to behave, to be polite, to be somewhat subservient, and to not raise their voices. It's interesting to me that during Obama's presidency, Obama was sometimes criticized for being too calm and too articulate, which, by the way, are cold words. And what people didn't understand was that if and when he raised his voice, that gave many people who had other feelings about him permission to say, well, there he goes, just another angry Black man.
Right.
That's the definition that would have been applied to his strong emotion, to his anger, because he would not have been behaving in the stereotypical historical manner that men of color are supposed to behave. Be calm, be cool, don't show your anger. So yes, it took me, admittedly, a long time to do that. And it took me growing into positions of authority where I felt not only did I have permission to do that, I had the need to do that, because as I said, if I had not been willing to fight back, to be angry, to say, wait a minute, this is wrong, I would not have been bringing my full self to the conversation. And as much as I want you, my adversary or my ally, to bring the full force of your personhood to a conversation, I want to have my permission to do the same, to bring my full self to it. And if you think I'm angry because of that, if you think I'm arrogant because of that, which I've been accused of, that's too bad. I have reasons to be arrogant. I have reasons to be self-aware and reasons to know what I know. And if you think that my bringing my knowledge, my experience, my point of view, and sometimes my anger to a conversation is arrogant or angry, that's your problem, not mine.
Amen. Do you feel like you have you witnessed racism while you were in the casting room or in the hiring process of actors? Have you witnessed that? Have they done it in front of you?
Well, I started as an actor, Stacey. I don't
Right.
know if you knew that.
I did.
I went to Carnegie Mellon as an acting major and acted for the first 7 or 8 years after graduation. And certainly as an actor, I witnessed that. I experienced that personally. There's a lot of stories coming out now about actors, current actors, people who are acting now, who've been asked to put a little sass on it, blacken it up, all of those things. I experienced that when I was an actor. I remember specifically auditioning for a production of Romeo and Juliet for the role of Tybalt. And the director saying to me, could you make it a little more streetsy? Could you do it again and make it a little bit more streetsy? It's one of the things, my experience of that was one of the things that moved me out of acting into being a director, because why would I want to be directed by people who had that point of view? I'll put it that way. Why would I want to be directed by those assholes was what I was really thinking.
Right.
So yes, I experienced that. I'm sympathetic to anyone who's still experiencing that, who is being treated in the casting process and or in the work process, is being treated in the room as an object of color rather than as an artist, who is being approached strictly on the basis of their color, not in celebration of that, but in exploitation of that. My heart breaks for that. And then to go on a little bit to the casting process, there's this term colorblind casting.
Yes.
Which I think is an abhorrent term, one that should never be used, because we don't live in a colorblind society.
Right.
I think anybody who believes in colorblind casting should not be allowed to drive, because you're going to have a problem. And I think you're going to have a problem when you try to apply that philosophy, if you will call it a philosophy, to the casting process. You should be conscious of color in casting. You should celebrate color in casting, just as I would celebrate your hair color. You don't walk into a room and I perceive you as having colorless hair. I see it, I recognize it, and hopefully I can celebrate it in the work. I have done a lot of what I call color conscious casting.
Oh, I love that.
With my production of, say, Kiss Me Kate or 12 Angry Men or Death of a Salesman years ago at the Guthrie, where I was conscious of the color of the actors of color playing these parts that had not previously been played by actors of color. I wanted the audience to be conscious of that. And I wanted that casting to bring a new richness and a new perspective to the material. I did not want anybody to be blind to it. And if you were blind to it, in fact, that would be my failure. That would be my failure to use the richness of people's color in service to the material, to heighten the material. I sometimes say it's like ringing a bell, and you're ringing the same bell in the same note. But what you hope to do with color conscious casting is to make the bell resonate in a new way and to bring a new tone to the bell than it's had before. Am I rattling on too much?
No, you're so, because really what I want us all to do is really listen, because I just think you're a wealth of information, and we have a finite amount of time. So you rattle on as much as you want. I am listening to every word. Right. Going back to what you just said, have you ever had, because you're saying you want to be color conscious, have you been met with a wall? Has anybody ever tried to stop you from being color conscious in your casting?
Rarely. Here's the thing I think is interesting, and here's something I've been talking about and fighting for years. When generally, not in all cases, but in many cases, when people are not open to color conscious casting, it's not that they're, in many cases, it's not that they're being consciously biased. It's that they never think about it.
Right.
Which is different. It's still a form of racism and prejudice, but it's not conscious bias. It's not that they look at the script or look at the material and say, there will be no actors of color in this production, in this movie, in this television show. It's that they never thought about it, which is its own insidious kind of bias, but closer to the truth in many cases. Now, in some cases, people are just prejudiced and biased, and they don't want any faces of color around. That's another story, and those people might be hopeless. Right. In my experience, it's often that people have not even considered it. They have not considered an actor of color for Shakespeare, for Chekhov, for Ibsen, for movies, for certain roles in movies. When it's pointed out, they say, "Oh, that's interesting. Oh, that might be interesting." Now, frequently, I'm thinking, "Well, duh, yeah,
Hello.
hello." And why does it take a black man to have to point it out? But that's okay. I'll take that responsibility joyously and happily, and appreciate the fact that I've been in the room to make that statement, to advance that idea. So I can't say that I've had to fight it a lot, but the fight is to bring it up, to say to people, there is another way that you might think about this. There are other possibilities that you might look at. Now, I've done it for a long time in my own work, fortunately with success. So the idea, the concept of doing that has pushed others to do the same thing, to think that way. Years ago, when I did Death of a Salesman with a black Lohman family, it was revolutionary.
Oh my God, I wish I could have seen that.
Yeah, I mean, there were letters literally from around the world because it was sort of unheard of at that point. And this was in the early 90s. The fact that it was so publicized encouraged others to do it, encouraged others to begin to think that way. So the fight has been to advance that kind of thinking more than to get people to do it or force people to do it. I don't want to force anybody to do it. You know, those who don't have the openness of heart, the openness of mind, the intelligence to think that way, let them go off and solve their problem. You know, let them go out and fight with themselves. I don't want to fight with them. I don't mind advancing the idea, advancing the concept, and pushing the door open. Toni Morrison once said, "I'm tired of racism. I'm tired of racism. From now on, I'm going to let racism and prejudice be the problem of those who are racist and prejudiced. I'm going to do my work."
I just got chills.
Yeah.
So that's sort of what you do. I mean, you embody this with such a strength that have you always had, like, because I know you started out in directing in theater and then you moved from theater to TV and you do both now. Has there been a difference there between theater and TV in terms of racism?
No, not a difference. Interestingly, I have sometimes found in theater we tend to think of ourselves as more highly evolved than those doing television. I have sometimes found the thinking in theater less highly evolved.
Really?
Yeah. I'm interested to see, and it'd be interesting to do a study on this. You know, with people like Shonda Rhimes,
yes,
you know, who creates the world as the world is, and now many other showrunners and writers.
That was one of my questions.
Yeah, it's interesting to me that on television, there are still exceptions, no doubt about it, but there's still, on television, I feel that the world is more fully reflected on a frequent basis by more actors of color in more unexpected places than it often is in the theater.
Yes, because theater is sort of, thought of as old school,
Yeah.
And my specific question, because I wrote about that, I wrote about Shonda Rhimes and Lena Waithe and Issa Rae and Wanda Sykes, so many of these really amazing writers, and I'm only naming female Black writers. I mean, there's many male Black writers, but they're not the first, right?
No,
There's been Black writers forever, but what was that push what happened? Because it happened right around Shonda Rhimes' time, when there was more of an acceptance in television, and something changed. Why did it change with her and these women?
Well, I have to push back on that a little, because I do think it goes back further. You know, I think it goes back to Stephen Bochco. And
okay, yeah, and NYPD Blue. And...
yes, yeah, that's where I was first conscious of the fact that these were showrunners, producers who were saying, the world that I'm creating on television is going to reflect the real world.
Mm-hmm.
And the real world has people of all colors in it.
Yes.
So network or studio or whoever, if you want this show on the air, you're going to have to accept the fact that that is the world I'm creating.
Right.
And frankly, if those shows had not been successful, Shonda Rhimes might not have had a chance to do what she has done. It is the success of those guys that allowed Shonda the privilege to create her world in her shows with equal amount of success. So that's still fairly recent in the history of
NYPD Blue is
television.
still my time. I mean, I was on that show. So.
Yeah, we're not talking about stuff that was produced in the 50s and 60s. You know, this was 80s, 90s. But thank God it started to happen back then. And I've often lamented that during that time, during those early years of an openness of consciousness about casting, I think the theater was actually way behind that.
Wow.
You know, I was still going to the theater too often and seeing only white people on the stage and in the audience. You know, and that was the situation I found at Pasadena Playhouse when I got there as artistic director, that I said pretty quickly, this is going to change.
Yeah.
you know, and if, going back to your first question, if I had to allow my anger out to advance that change, so be it.
And so you did.
And so I did.
Bravo. Yeah. I mean,
not only sometimes on the stage, but in the boardroom, you know, whipping out a little black anger in a boardroom can be an effective thing to do.
And how were you met when you did that?
Well, I think it shook people up. Sometimes it scared people. Sometimes it intimidated people. As I said, it pushed people to say, God, he's arrogant, or, you know, he's on a black agenda, which was ridiculous, of course. I was on an artistic agenda. So I had to deal with that. You know, I had to deal with that sometimes by conversation, but sometimes, frankly, by ignoring it and moving on and doing the work.
Someone posted something today about the fact that there's something that's said by white actors when a person of color gets a job, and it's maybe going back to what you said, there's like this covert racism. It's not overt, but they're saying things that they don't even realize is racist. Like, oh, well, they went diverse. Like, not acknowledging that that actor was actually amazing.
Yes.
And they decided through story or whatever that was the person they wanted for the role. But all of the, you know, it's like this call of, you know, reverse racism almost.
Yeah. Well, that conscious or unconscious can be the worst kind of racism.
Horrible.
Because it diminishes the artistry of the person.
Exactly.
You know, I don't know anybody. I can't think of a situation where a black actor has ever been hired who is not also a wonderful, gifted artist.
Yes.
You know, so when it's later said, oh, well, they just got the role because they're black or because they're Latino or because they're Asian. That's such a horrible diminishment of that person's talent. Imagine if I was to say to that same person, well, you just got that role because you have blue eyes. You know, how would they react to that?
Yeah.
You know, and to those who say, well, you know, it's tough for me to get a job because they're going ethnic all the time now. Well, it's about time you know how that feels, because actors of color have been experiencing the inverse of that ratio for years and years and years. So, you know, wait it out.
Do you have specific advice or words of wisdom that you would give to actors of color?
Well, two things, I think.
Or maybe white actors who are saying,
I mean, the first words that I would say to an actor of color are the same words that I would say to any actor of any color or of all colors, which is concentrate on your artistry. Bring yourself to the level where your artistry and your ability is unquestionable.
Yeah.
Where it's undeniable. Your ability to play whatever role in whatever material is undeniable. Develop all of the skills that make it possible for that not to be denied. That's number one. Number two is, in terms of actors of color, don't let yourself be denied. Knock on any and every door, and don't deny yourself. Don't you say, actor of color, well, they'll never think about me for that because I'm Black, because I'm Latino, because I'm Asian. They may say that, but put yourself in front of them, as I said, undeniably and without question. And then if they say that, going back to my Toni Morrison quote, that's their problem, not yours.
Yes.
Put yourself in front of them. If that's the wrong person, put yourself in front of somebody else. Knock on another door. Kick on another door. And for all of us who care, leave the door open. You know, leave the door open so that we don't have to knock so hard sometimes, because we've been knocking for a long time.
A long time.
Yeah.
And I'm just wondering, you know, because we have had this, you know, acknowledgement of lack of diversity in our business. There has been this but it doesn't feel like a true acknowledgement. You know, I'm wondering.
Well, there's a difference between acknowledgement and what are you going to do about it?
Right.
You know, I don't think the acknowledgement of this is new. You know, we've certainly been acknowledging this inequity as long as I've been in the business.
Me too.
And before, you know, and I didn't graduate from college in 2010. So, right. You know, we've been acknowledging this for a long time. And in truth, a lot has been done, as we've just discussed. But that doesn't mean that there's not more to do. And we can be, as a business, as a field, we can be self-congratulatory for what has been done and say, okay, well, you know, we did a lot. Maybe we can stop now. Well, no, we can't stop. You know, if that door can be open to a level of 100%, we can't be satisfied with 15%. 15% is better than zero. I acknowledge that. But if we can open that door to a degree of 100%, let's get it open. Let's do the hard work to get it open.
How do we do that? Like, do you, as a member of the DGA, do you have meetings about that? Do you talk about that?
Yes. Yes to all of the above. But eventually, talk is nowhere as good as action. You know, more casting of actors of color, but back it up from that. we talked about Shonda Rhimes. Shonda Rhimes is one, and a great one. But where are the other 25 showrunners of color? You know, it's wonderful to talk about Shonda Rhimes, but it's sad to talk about Shonda Rhimes because she's a one, as I have been a one.
Well, but what about Issa Rae and Wanda Sykes and
wonderful,
Lena Waithe?
Wonderful, but what a small percentage even all of those names are.
Yes.
When you think about all of the showrunners out
Yes.
there, when you think
Yes.
about all of the creators, when you think about all the network positions out there, when you think about the number of people who are out there who are now, with all these cable systems and everything, in a position to greenlight a project, what percentage of those people are people of color?
Like what?
Horribly
3%?
Horribly low. So those are the doors I believe we now have to be knocking on, you know, because it's clear we have abundant artists of color, great Black actors, great Black writers, great Black directors. That's, I used the term undeniable before, that's undeniable. But we've got to get more people of color into those decision-making positions, into those power positions. There are a few, but far too few. But that's what's going to turn word into action. And as we said, words are great, but words are not so great if they're only words, if they don't get reflected in further action.
So I feel like you've put yourself in that position. You are in a position where you are the one doing the hiring.
Yes.
What are the action steps to take to bring up more people of color into these decision-making places? How does that happen? How can that happen?
It happens from conversations like this. It happens from constantly pointing out that the inequities still exist. It happens by not being complacent. And frankly, it happens by demand. You know, if we're naive, if we don't think that the protests going on right now about the horrible situations, which we all know about, those names that we've been hearing that deserve great honor. If we don't think the protest over that isn't also born out of the frustrations that people of color are feeling about 100 other things,
Right.
then you're either naive or you're stupid.
Right.
So that the voices that are being raised right now in cities all over America about those incidents of police violence, America, if it is smart, will hear those as protests against all of the inequities in our country and begin to do something about that. And I am perhaps overly optimistic sometimes, but I believe that will happen. I believe those protests will be heard, not by everyone, again, but there are many who will hear those voices and respond.
Do you mind talking for a second about how you felt when this all started kind of coming to a head the last couple of days of George Floyd, like when, you know, today's Breonna Taylor's birthday. I mean, when everything kind of, when the anger started to swell because, you know, we watched someone lose their life on TV and no one was being held accountable. Can you just tell us a little bit about what was going through your head or how you deal with that even?
Mm-hmm. I am one, Stacey, who's more prone to sorrow than anger and propelled by sorrow to action rather than anger. Though I don't, as we've just been talking about, I do not deny that anger can be a powerful tool. But my sorrow comes from the fact that, and we're hearing more and more about this now, America is reacting to those incidents that just happen to get caught on somebody's phone,
Right.
on somebody's recording device of some kind. Why? It gives me sorrow to think that it takes something going viral on the internet to get attention. When those kind of incidents happen over and over and over every single day and don't get caught. So that gives me sorrow, but at the same time, I literally say, thank God that something got the attention. Something was ordained, shall we say, to be caught on tape.
Yeah.
So that we could stop saying, oh, that doesn't happen anymore, or we don't have to worry about that anymore, or coronavirus is the only plague in this country.
Right.
You know, I'm sorrowful about coronavirus, obviously, but I'm more sorrowful that this plague of racism continues and has continued, with change, with enough change for some to say, oh, we've handled that, but not enough change that we can stop dealing with both of these illnesses, you know?
Yeah, and I mean, even when some people started rioting, for people to care more about stuff than they do about human life.
Right.
That was a very hard recollection for it was hard for me to hear people, friends of mine actually, start to talk about how isn't it a shame?
Yeah.
Isn't it a shame that they're rioting now? And I'm like, what do you expect them to do?
Right. Did you hear Al Sharpton's eulogy yesterday?
I transcribed it. I transcribed it.
Good for you. One of the most eloquent and brilliant explanations of this I've heard. Yes, this is about that policeman's knee being on my neck, but this is really about all people of color having the power structure's knee on their neck. You know?
Yeah.
I can be what I want to be. I can do what I want to do, but I can't do that with your knee on my neck.
Right.
If you'll just get off me, just do that.
Yeah.
That's really all the help I need. Somebody gave you the power to put your knee on my neck.
Yeah. Just get off.
All I need for you to do is to stand up. You can stand up and walk away. I don't even need to have a conversation with you. But I do need for you to get off my neck, because I can't be without breathing, literally.
I mean, this has to change the talk as we go back to work from coronavirus. This has to, I mean, I can't imagine that it's not going to be the first topic of conversation about how do we address this in our art, because art is supposed to reflect the time, is supposed to reflect life. And I was watching Hollywood, Ryan Murphy's Hollywood, and I was like, this is so timely. And I can't help but think that when you go back to directing your first episode of whatever, that isn't going to be something that has to be reflected in our business, in the shows.
Yes, but again, that's not new. You know, as you said, I did 5 seasons of Girlfriends.
Yeah.
You know, Girlfriends was a situation comedy, but if you think on Girlfriends, we didn't frequently, 10, 12 years ago, whatever it was, deal with issues of race and frustrations of race in that sitcom frequently, you'd be wrong. You know, you can go back and look. If you think The Cosby Show didn't deal with that 25 years ago, it did, you know. Will we have to go back and do that again? And should we? Yes, because our storytelling is a powerful weapon.
Yeah.
You know, our storytelling as artists is our means of protest and raising our voices. We must do that. We will do that, and we should do that. Um, and hopefully there will be some who have the kind of reactions to these protests that you're talking about that will hear it differently through theater, through television, through films, through stories that they can attach to and maybe hear in a different way. I hope so.
Mm-hmm. I feel like, you know, there has been some very powerful movies lately that address it. I just wonder if it's going to go up the chain, like they're being able to be made. But again, if the top is all white people, you know, it's the white people making these decisions. So that's like a ceiling that has to be broken.
But that, you know, race is only one factor. The other factor is money. Our business is an art form, but it's a business, you know, and it's based on economics. And thank God we've had a film like Black Panther, you know, which made hundreds of millions of dollars telling a story about Black people. That's also undeniable, you know. Can't nobody say anymore, you can't make a movie with an all Black cast because it's not going to make any money.
Right. I just got goosebumps.
You know, you can say a whole lot of other things, but you cannot say that. You cannot. Again, it's about being undeniable. It's undeniable that if you make a great movie about people of color, it will be supported, and not just by people of color.
So I want to talk about being undeniable as an actor, because a lot of the people that are following this right now are actors. And can you give advice? And there's older actors and there's newer actors here. Mm-hmm. But what is your best advice to someone on being undeniable? Like, I always talk about doing the work, but what does that mean to you? What would you give advice? How would you advise an actor?
A couple of things. Before I give the advice, I want to say, and I know you had some qualms about this, I don't think there's anything even in this moment wrong with us talking about these practical skills, the tools that actors need, directors need, writers need, because beyond all of what we're going through right now, which is significant, we have to go back to work and we have to do what we do.
Yes.
So I have no qualms having this conversation as well. One big thing that I often say is about strictly the way you think about auditions. I think too many people think of auditions as an adversary situation, and they come in either intimidated or angry or attitudinal, because before you walk in the room, you think, well, he ain't going to be interested in me for whatever reason. One big thing is to know that I'm actually waiting for you to be brilliant. I am waiting for you to be the solution to my problem, which is I got to cast this thing, television show, movie, play. I'm waiting for you to make my day wonderful by being wonderful. So just come in to show me what a terrific collaborator you're going to be.
Yeah.
Equalize it in that way.
Yeah.
You know, don't think of me as having all the power and you have none. You have as much or maybe more power than I do. So come in with your power,
Yeah.
come in with your sense of self, and come in just to show me what a great collaborator, how the brilliance of the work that we can do together if you can see what I have to offer. I'm looking for it, so if you offer it to me, I will see it, you know. And even if I don't see it for this time, show it to me now, because I will remember you some other time, you know. So please don't come in thinking that I hate you. Don't come in thinking that I don't really want to see you. I am actually waiting for you to be my one, the person that I so need. So come in with a sense of power about that, but be prepared. That's a big one.
Yeah.
It's hard to have a sense of power if you are not fully prepared.
Right.
And when I say prepared, that's also about your skill level, not just in terms of learning the sides for this audition, but like ballet dance. You know, no ballet dancer has ever come into an audition for a ballet company and been brilliant because they warmed up that morning but never took a ballet class before that.
Amen.
You know? So actors have to do the same thing. Give yourselves the skills to dance brilliantly when you get into the room. And then don't inhibit yourself. Bravery is the other thing. Be brave enough not to try to guess what I want in this role, in this play, but to show me what you think, because you might show me something I hadn't thought of.
Right.
And usually in auditions, that is the person I pay attention to. The person who opens a door to the material that I hadn't dared to look through.
Oh.
So that's a matter of some bravery. When somebody does that and I go, I didn't see that in that scene. Even if it's wrong, I will be fascinated by that. And then give me the opportunity maybe to tweak it. The one thing actors have to do when they're in the audition room is to relax enough to be able to listen. You know, so that if I give you an adjustment, you actually are available enough to me to hear what I say. And even if you think I'm wrong, do something different. This is a practical suggestion, you know. Hopefully I'll give you something that you can work with. But even if I don't, change it in some way so that at least I believe that you can hear me when I talk to you. Because that's another thing I want to know. You know, really beyond, after the first time through a scene, I know my feelings about the level of that person's craft. The rest of the time in callbacks, all of that, I'm just looking for how we're going to play together. You know, do I want to date this person for the next 4 or 5 weeks of rehearsal or not?
Right.
You know, that's what I want to know.
Is there a particular essence of someone that comes in who, I know it's a little bit amorphous, but is there a certain actor that you're attracted? Is there an essence that walks through the door that puts you at ease? Is that a weird question?
No. I think I understand. Beyond what I've already said about please don't walk through the door angry or nervous, even scared. Here's what I would say. Make sure you bring yourself into the room with you. Mm-hmm. Don't leave yourself out in the hallway. Mm-hmm. Because not only do I want to see the material, what I'm really looking for is what you specifically are going to do with this material. Mm-hmm. And all you got that will make that really profoundly different from anybody else is you.
Right.
Because I'm hearing the same scene over and over all day.
Yeah.
It's only your particular facility, your being, your journey up until now, your fullness pushed through the sieve of the material that's going to make it particular and special, you know. Usually when somebody that I'm interested in leaves the room and I want to cast that person or see that person again, I don't say that was a special reading. I say there's something special about that person.
Oh.
Because I've seen them as much as I've seen the scene.
Yeah.
And that, for me, is what makes actors fascinating.
Yeah. When I'm watching and I get lost in the moment of the story instead of watching someone act. It's a beautiful thing to be able to do.
Yeah. Yeah. And actually, I'm big on what you just said. And I'll inevitably, in rehearsals for a play, at some point, I'll always say, you know, everybody's got to stop all this acting.
Yeah. I say it all the time.
You just have to stop. All this acting is driving me crazy. You know, just be in the moment and behave, talk and listen. You know you can act. So stop showing me that.
Yeah, I hired you because you can act. Yeah, now let's do this. Let's do the story. Let's tell it. Let's have the conversation.
Stop all that acting.
So do you have any advice for actors about how to deal with rejection?
A little, and I know it's hard, and I know there's no panacea for it, but in truth, there is no rejection, or there shouldn't be, of you as an actor and certainly as a person. If you don't get this part this time, there could be hundreds of reasons. It does not mean that I didn't see you, number one. It does not mean that you are not gifted, that you are not an artist. And you are certainly no less any of those things when you walk out of the room than you were when you walked into it. Mm-hmm. It's just that I have a whole bunch of other considerations. You know, my feelings about this play or this script, other people that I know are already going to be in it, any number of things. So if you could, as I said before, make sure you bring yourself into the room. Make sure you take yourself out of the room
and leave it behind.
Yeah, make sure you take the fullness of your being, your good feelings about yourself, hopefully your good feelings about what you did while you were in there. Take that out of the room with you, and then know that the decisions I'm going to make are decisions I have to make on many things, not because I am rejecting you, because so many times, Stacey, in my career, I've hired people many times from what I've seen the first time they've auditioned for me, even though I may not hire them until the fifth time.
Wow.
I remember what that person did the first time, and I'm waiting for all of those decisions to line up so we can actually play together and have that fun that I talked about. So there's no way in the world, though I did not give you that job the first time, I clearly have not rejected you. I'm just waiting for the time to be right for us to be together.
Yeah. Oh, for you to be together. I love that.
Yeah.
We're both from the theater. We both come from the theater. And so we're used to working with a core group of people that,
Mm-hmm.
kind of get hired all the time together.
Mm-hmm.
And it's a little bit different in television. And I'm just wondering if you've ever tried to kind of shift that way of thinking into TV. I know Tyler Perry has, for sure, because he has a compound,
There are only 20 people who he can work with now.
Yeah, I know. I just wonder if you have you been able to do that? Like, oh, I want to see this person. I want to bring this person in. Or is it just always about the story and servicing that story and really finding new people? Or
It's a bit of both. it's a bit of all of the above. I certainly have read scripts and said, "Oh my God, so and so would be great for this," or had the showrunners say that to me. What do you think? You know anybody who'd be good for this? And I tend to go toward people I've worked with in the theater for that often. But I will say I'm certainly one who loves to discover somebody I've not worked with before. I'll be really honest, and if there are casting directors that I've worked with often, I have said to casting directors, please do not bring me the same group of people that you always bring in here.
Mm-hmm.
Number one, I want you to dig a little deeper,
Mm-hmm.
but I want to see some people I've not seen before.
Yeah.
Because I have a good memory. I don't need to see again a lot of people unless I ask for them because I want to see what they'll do in the context of this material. I'm at this point in my dotage, I'm really eager and have had thrilling and wonderful relationships with people that I've never seen before.
Wow.
I'm eager to discover that new person, whatever their age, by the way. It doesn't have to be a young person, but to discover someone that I've not known before. Where I say to them, where have you been? Yeah,
have you ever, and I'm sure that this doesn't happen much anymore, or maybe it does, but in the beginning, did you ever have to say to a casting director, I need more color?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, no, that's going back to what we talked about earlier. There was a time when I would have to say that frequently. I would have to say, don't only bring white people into this room.
Yeah.
There are some opportunities here to advance the richness of this material by using actors of color. And I've often said, for these roles, this role, this role, this role. So yes, I've had to say that. Now, interestingly, more often than not, and I hope they're not asking me this question because it's me. I hope that they're always asking this question, whoever is directing. Casting directors will say, and it's funny when a casting director says this to me, they'll say, are you open to seeing actors of color for these roles? And I'm kind of, well, yeah.
Do you have a passion project that you've always wanted to do, that you have in your mind? You've done so many things. Do you feel like you're just waiting for people to bring you things, or is there something that's kind of in your head that you've always wanted to do?
I have been so lucky to get to do so many of them, and certainly I don't deny that one of the great benefits of being the artistic director of the theater is you get to pick your passion projects,
yes,
and put them into the season. So, between my time as associate artistic director at the Old Globe and then artistic director at the Playhouse, I've hit most of the bases. But I do have one, and that is there's a musical version of A Raisin in the Sun called Raisin, which actually in the season that it opened was a Tony Award winning musical, best musical, but is very, very rarely done. I think partially out of respect for the play, that people have such respect for the play that if people want to approach that material, they go to the play. But it actually is a wonderful musical, largely because the book, by and large, is Lorraine Hansberry's play, but it has a wonderful score. And I've always thought it was important historically to do it because it's rarely done. But actually right now, it has a relevance and a resonance that would make it a really valuable experience in the theater.
So is this what's happening right now in our country? Is this kind of bringing it back up for you and wanting to really do it?
Yeah, it's sort of always with me, and one that I keep advancing here and there to theaters. But I think I'll do that a little more forcefully now than perhaps I have over the last few months, because theater is so powerful when it speaks to the moment and the time that we're in. Mm-hmm. And this is a musical that does that.
Can you give, do you have any advice for the actors and the writers and the directors, people who want to direct, who are in our business right now, but are, I'm even finding it hard to, I feel a great responsibility to be active and an activist for Black people in this fight that we're sort of in, and also going back to work, which is what we talked about yesterday. Mm-hmm. Do you have any advice about how to combine those two things so that you feel like you're honoring, the shift that is happening, but you have to go about your work. You have to go back into the art of it and how you combine those two things.
Mm-hmm. Well, the first thing I would say, when people talk about activism and what can I do, everyone, myself included, should remember that listening is an active thing to do. To be willing to keep your mouth shut and to listen carefully, particularly if you can listen as you put yourself in the other person's shoes and walk a mile in their shoes, to really get an understanding of what is being said. That's an incredibly active and valuable thing to do. My belief is that what you get out of that is something that in fact is going to feed your work. You can only bring to your work who and what you have as a human being, So if you can really put yourself there and absorb that and grow from that, we should be getting better artists out of this strife.
Yeah.
So whatever that work is, in either the creation of it, if that is what you're prone to do, or in the active ability to facilitate the work that's written by others, to be part of the creation in that way, bring what you've learned from this into that work. Even if the work is Shakespeare, even if the work is Ibsen, and certainly if it is work that is in its conception and its writing reflective of this time, bring what you've heard, in addition to what you've done, what you've heard, what you've learned into the work. But we do need to get back to work.
Yes.
Because our value is in the telling of stories and doing that brilliantly, excellently, and with fullness and compassion. So if we can learn from this and bring a new level of all of those qualities to the work, that's a tremendous benefit, I think.
Yeah, I hope, my dream is that all of this emotion that everyone is having right now, people who are marching, who then have to go to an audition, are able to use that in their work. And we're going to see some just amazing performances, because sometimes, even if I go back to The Mask, people go into an audition and they think they have to wear the mask. And right now, the mask is down, right? And so now they can bring the fullness of everything of who they are, everyone, even all people,
Yes.
But especially people of color who have felt like they had to be a certain way. And now, especially in this time, you guys can take the mask off right? I
Yeah.
mean, that's my dream.
Right. Yeah, I think that's true. And, you know, we talked earlier about the fact that fortunately, I've 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 been very blessed to be in a position or positions where I've been able to take the mask off.
Mm-hmm.
Right now, what we're seeing in the streets is a lot of people with their masks off. A lot of people of all colors, by the way, coming out and saying, I'm not going to be placid about this. I'm not going to be meek about this. I'm going to get out on those streets and shout and scream. That's healthy for society, number one, but I think will be very healthy for the art that comes out of this time.
So somebody just asked a question, and she had to do a self-tape for Hello Dolly.
Mm-hmm.
And she said she had a really hard time
Mm-hmm.
doing it because of how she's feeling and so what advice would you give to a person who has to do an audition that doesn't really have anything to do with?
Correct. It relates to what I talked about before, which is, as an artist, you want to use the fullness of your being. You want to use all of who and what you are. Yes, we're all angry right now and frustrated and scared by coronavirus, and all of those feelings. But there is also joy. There is also laughter. There is also exuberance. You know, nothing about the times that we're in should shut down all of that as well.
Yes.
No, I don't want to live in a world where both the anger, the frustration, and the fear exist, but also the joy and the passion and the exuberance. You know, and fortunately, we are in a field where we're not policemen, you
Right.
know, we're not firemen, you know, we don't work in a factory. We're lucky to be in a world where we can use all of that and transmit all of that to the world. And we must, on both sides of it.
So that was beautiful, and I could stop right there. But
Okay.
what I'm just going to give, you know, one more, like, if there was a closing thing, words or inspiration that you wanted to give to Black actors, to any actors, what would you want to say to them now during this time?
Well, here's what I would say, and actually it comes out of the first conversation we had about my doing this. It would be easy to think of what we do, being actors, being directors, being writers, playwrights, producers. It's easy to think of that right now as being somewhat trivial, as being not really important when there's so many big things going on in the world. It's important to remember that what we do is essential and valuable and earth-changing. We are the ones who put the mirror up to mankind and say, look at us. Look at who we are. Look at how far we've come, but look at how far we've got to go. We can do that through the making of our stories, the telling of our stories, and the creation of our art. And we must never think of it as trivial or dismissible. It is an essential service, to use a phrase of the time. It's essential to our society that we keep making art.
I needed to hear that. Thank you. I really did. I needed to hear that. And I'm just, you know, I'm so grateful for you.
Thank you, Stacy.
I'm honored. I said to Vincent before this started, I was walking around and breathing and I said, I feel like I'm about to get on the phone with President Obama. Like, I wish
you had.
Because because I just have so much respect for you and for what you've done in this business, and respect for you as a human, because your energy is just so immense and grounded and light. You're like a shining light. And so I don't think I can thank you enough for taking this time.
Thanks to you, and thanks to everybody who's been kind enough to listen. Time is valuable, so thank you all.